Hello and good evening. Welcome to the Wakefield School Committee meeting of Tuesday, May 28th, 2024. We have just exited executive session and have come into open session. As we start every school committee meeting, we will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And I'll begin with a reading of the mission statement. The vision of the Wakefield Public Schools is to graduate students who are confident lifelong learners, who are respectful and caring members of their community. Our mission is to prepare students for college, career, and community by providing rich and challenging curriculum, high-quality instruction, and educational experiences that meet their individual needs and interests. I think at this point, I think we will I'm going to take public comment and the school choice public hearing out of order so that we can meet our 7:15 deadline. So at this point, we'll be opening up for our public comment on school choice. Is there anyone on Zoom, Ian, that may want to comment during this public session?
They just came in, but I'm not seeing anybody as of yet, so if you can give it just a couple
Sure.
of seconds, we'll
Yeah,
see.
no, we'll give them a few minutes.
No, we don't have to make a motion to enter into that, right? Public comment, or, oh, we did.
Move that we open a public comment hearing on school choice.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Judy? Yeah.
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Fontanella?
Yes.
Mr. Engels?
Yes.
Ms. Collins? And Dr. Piscopo?
Yes.
Thank you. For the sake of discussion, Dr. Lyon. Oh. I was going to ask if you want to give a brief overview of the motion itself of school choice.
Happy to do it. Good evening, everybody. The Mass General Law requires, MGL 76 subsection 12B requires annually that school committees take up the work of looking at school choice and the question of school choice. So districts are required annually school committees must vote to participate or not to participate. For the past number of years since I've been here, this is my 9th year, and so we've kind of taken up the topic of school choice, and we've talked about it, and I've kind of given my perspective, and again, it's just one perspective, and that perspective is based on the class sizes that we're looking to maintain, based on the limited space that we have in the district. You've heard me say earlier that, what pre-K, K1 looks like in terms of numbers and ratios, but it's not just at those levels. Really, at all of our levels, our class sizes are pretty big, and where our class sizes are not at the maximum, they're at a ratio where we feel like teachers can really manage them and really do an effective job. So it's, from my perspective, I think I would advise, as the superintendent of schools in Wakefield, for the district not to participate in school choice at this point in time. And part of this process is a public hearing to hear other perspectives, but also to hear from the administration on this as well.
Great, thank you. Follow up with WCAT. Ian, do we have anyone that would like to make comment at this time?
I have no indication at this
Okay,
time.
thank you. All right. Is there a motion? Mr. Markham?
Oh, good.
I actually had a question
Sure.
about it before, because I assume when we make a motion, we'll just make a motion to either approve or deny, right? Just a quick question.
Yeah.
So let's say that you recommend that right now our class sizes are good, that there's really no more space. Just as a hypothetical, let's say like pre-K through 8, let's say we were maxed out on class size,
Yep.
and we were like really good. But let's say that there was a shortfall, hypothetically, I'm not saying it is, like let's say freshman, sophomore year. There's no way you could like say, we want to be open for school choice for certain age groups, right? It's just like an open
No,
policy, right?
no, you can, the school committee can specify certain schools, certain grade levels, yes. So the
Okay, so
school
you
committee-
could do that.
The school committee has a right to make that vote if they so chose to do that.
Okay. So they could actually target particular schools / ages.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
I really didn't know that. That was
Yeah. Yeah.
Good question.
was not a gotcha. I really
No,
didn't.
no, no,
I
it's good.
Truly.
It's a good question.
Anyone else? Mr. Markham?
I'd like to make a motion that the Wakefield Public Schools not participate in school choice in school year 24-25.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Those in favor? Okay. Judy, that seems unanimous. Thank you.
Ms. Quinn,
Yes.
Mr. Markham,
Oh,
Yes.
oh,
Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Fontanella,
Yes.
Mr. Ingles,
yes,
Ms. Colleran,
Yes.
Dr. Piscadlo.
Yes.
thank you. And then just to go back to general public comment, I don't think I see anybody else on Zoom and nobody in the audience. Pete?
Do we need a motion to exit the public hearing, or are we good?
4 people on Zoom, but nobody's indicated.
Thank you.
I'd like to make a motion to exit the school choice public hearing for the 2024-2025 school year.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Those in favor? Okay. Those against? None? Okay.
Ms.
Motion.
Quinn,
Yes.
Mr. Malcolm?
Apparently Julie is trying to talk, but she's having problems with Zoom.
About
On school choice or
regular?
public comment?
Do not know the answer to that.
Okay.
I would guess public comment.
I would say probably public comment as well. Let me see if I can.
I make a motion to go back into public comment. When do we leave?
You weren't in public.
Well, no, we were closing out the school
Yeah.
choice,
Oh, I'm sorry.
and we were voting to
Okay.
close out school choice.
Oh, my bad.
Judy, we closed out school choice.
We don't have to make a
Okay.
I think we're good.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
I think I just heard her.
It's Julie Scott.
Yep,
Hi,
we can
Julie.
hear you, Julie.
I was waiting and waiting for like a half an hour, and then you guys started. I'm like, oh my God, I don't have a microphone. Hi, I wanted to do public participation, but I know I'm late.
Are you for just standard public participation, or did you have something you want to say about school choice?
Standard public.
Yep. Nope. This is that part.
Okay, great, thanks. My name's Julie Scott. I live at 4 Central Street. Recently, I, along with so many in the community, supported the building of 2 new schools in Wakefield that will represent a large increase on the tax burden of all Wakefield taxpayers. My first 2 points tonight is a history of overly large school department budget requests that have been made at town meetings. From our finance committee, we all hear, especially in April, from Mr. Sullivan and Mr. Sherman, who are both financial experts, when they express concern of the sustainability of the entire town's budget. For the past few years, their words have grown even more powerful. At the town meeting, at the end of April, the Finance Committee expressed a powerful dismay about the financial overreach of what they perceive to be the 2024-25 school budget. Financial warnings are regularly spoken of at town meeting in regard to large budget increases that the school committee supports. A month ago, the Finance Committee strongly recommended to reduce the school department's budget by $500,000. I voted with my fingers crossed, and I closed my eyes, and I supported your larger figure. But please note, in the future, I will not vote to support a school department budget that is not in line with Finance Committee recommendations. With a decades-long career in education, I understand budgets thoroughly, and I understand contract negotiations, and I'm keenly aware of how teacher contracts are politicized in order to gain support at town meeting in regard to larger than advised school budgets. Moving forward, Wakefield taxpayers must see school budgets that work within the confines of what our town's financial experts are advising. Make that your one goal for the upcoming year. My second point is that I have written to the town council and to the school committee about histories of retreat meetings that have been held by both groups. The town council immediately responded and eliminated this practice for this year. We should all have a core belief in government transparency, and the school committee's response is on tonight's agenda. It's item 12, where you are still planning the retreat meeting, but it's scheduled for a Saturday, July 20th, when thousands of Wakefield taxpayers will be on summer vacation. Last year, the school committee held 2 separate meetings on August 22nd. The first meeting was a retreat and a goal-setting meeting, and it was held from 4 to 7 in the high school library. There was no Zoom link, so there is absolutely no video available for the public to view. Meeting minutes could only be found 3 weeks later if one searched through an entire meeting packet. Wakefield taxpayers had to wait 3 weeks to find out what happened at a meeting that did not qualify to be an executive session meeting as determined by state law. The second meeting that you had was a regular school open session meeting. Do not expect any taxpayers to continue to support excessive school budget asks in the future if work that you do as a committee is not transparent. And it also has to be financially aligned with our town's financial outlook. And that means I would like you to meet at a meeting specifically with the finance committee. Cease having retreat meetings and instead have a regular school committee meeting to discuss school-related budget goals this year, but have this meeting as a team with the entire finance committee. It's clear that they are our financial experts. They are here to support each and every one of us, and it's clear they have important suggestions to help you meet your yearly goals. To measure town sentiment in regard to the practice of retreat meetings, if this is the way you continue to want to go, prior to the next meeting, I ask that you have a survey done, and I can help you write the survey, and we mail it out to the taxpayers of Wakefield. Thank you again for all that you do and what you offer to do for the community and its students and all who live here. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie.
Thank you.
And with no one else in studio or online, I think we will close public comment. Moving next to agenda item 8, we have Student Advisory Council. We may get an answer on graduation and prom night.
Hello. Okay, so I wanted to update just on the school. So first,
Can I just pause you for?
Oh,
Can
sorry.
you introduce yourself?
oh, sorry,
Yeah.
that's so
No,
rude of me.
No.
My name is
Not at all.
Shay Sunken.
Shay.
I'm a junior at Wakefield High School.
Welcome.
So first, to start with the academics, math MCAS and AP testing finished up last week. Next up is biology MCAS, which will take place next week on the dates of June 4th and 5th. Last week, the Unified Basketball Jamboree was a huge success this year, as well as every year. Spring sports are all nearing to their end, and the tournaments have started, and congratulations to all the boys and girls spring sports, because everyone made tournament this year. Senior week started tonight with senior award night. Senior prom and the grand march are tomorrow night at 5:15 on the Common. Graduation is this Saturday at 10 o'clock on Landrigan Field. We all wanted to say congrats to the seniors and the best of luck. And also this week the kids had an opportunity of seeing the exhibit that's called the Hate Ends Now exhibit. It is a replica of the Holocaust train car, which had great audio visuals, and it was really fun to actually see. I enjoyed it a lot. There was a lot of historical artifacts and allowed a real-life experience on the happenings in the Holocaust. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Anyone have any questions for our youth?
You may not know this answer, but maybe the superintendent, but with commencement, with graduation happening, are there any plans, extra plans for parking or things like that, particularly with?
So Tim has talked about, so we're gonna have the bond lot,
Okay.
that's gonna be online, we're gonna have the teacher lot down below.
Yeah.
So the street, bond lot, teacher lot, and then parking and so as well as Woodville. So we are thinking we should be okay.
Okay.
But Tim O'Brien is working on that now.
Great.
It's a great
Thank you.
question. Shay, can you share a little bit about conversations that took place with students and teachers after the students visited the cattle car?
So the day that I visited, I also was speaking at the Memorial Day Assembly, which was also very fun. I didn't even mention that, but we got to actually recognize you too, so
Thank you.
that was nice. After I went into the exhibit, my history teacher, Mr. O'Brien, we went outside and we just talked about kind of the history of the Holocaust, and we talked about kind of like, I don't know, like, it was kind of a quick conversation, but we just kind of like recognized like what people went through, like how it's changed so much like since now, like, and then, and kind of we just like, he related stuff to like the present, and just like, I don't know, it was really cool to see. Yeah, sorry.
No, it's okay. I asked the question because some of our school committee members are teachers, but I also think that one of the wonders or takeaways for us is, I had the opportunity to listen to some student questions and listen to some conversation, right? And so I think a lot of, or the little that I heard was really, I think, exceptional, but I only heard a little.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that came up is just, what were student takeaways and kind of things that you think about, when you said then and now, right? I'm wondering if, what that means, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like, just like with everything going on, kind of like in like, like Israel, like with Hamas and Palestine, like we was kind of just like relating it to that, just because like that's such a current topic now, and seeing the Holocaust like train car kind of like made everyone just think about things like then and now, and like how everything's just like how history just definitely should not repeat itself. So we just like kind of talked about that a little bit, but also in the train car there was, I don't know if like you saw or
I
heard the
did.
train car, but it was really cool because there was like this 95-year-old woman, and she just like was explaining her life as a child and how she got separated from her mother, and she was like went in the train car. It took like 2 days. They had like a bucket of water, and I don't know, it was really actually interesting to like hear about.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. We
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
It's powerful.
Nicely done.
Thank you,
for
Shane.
having me.
And welcome. That's great. Moving on to item 9, consent agenda.
Move that the school committee approve the minutes of the May 14th, 2024 school committee meeting, and accept the minutes of the May 13th, 2024 school committee student services subcommittee meeting as presented.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Those in favor? Any against? No? Great, thank you. Item 10, we have some budget items. Christine?
We have some gifts to accept tonight. The first one is from the Wakefield Track Boosters Club. I think we have a motion to accept a gift of $5,000 to support 2 stipends for the 2 assistant track coaches.
Move that the school committee accept with gratitude the donation of $5,000 from the Wakefield Track Boosters Club, stipends for 2 assistant track coaches for the 2024 spring season.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Those in favor? All right. No one against.
We have another gift tonight, but it is from an anonymous donor that we have a motion to accept for the Walton School.
Move that the school committee accept with gratitude the donation of $350 from an anonymous donor for paint for the mural on the Walton School retaining wall. Additionally, Stephanie and Ryan Hannes will paint the Wildcat logo in the center of Davidson Circle.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Those in favor? And thank you to Anonymous, wherever you are. That sounds great. Love public art. Item 11, superintendent's remarks.
Thank you so much. With the permission of the chair, I'd like to take items out of order.
Yep.
Thank you. I'd like to start off by inviting Dustin up to the table. This is Dustin O'Brien, our Director of Food Service, to give an update on WPS Food Service.
Dustin has a handout for school committee tonight.
Okay, good evening, everyone. As Doug said, I'm Dustin O'Brien. I'm the food service director for the school district. So tonight, we're going to do a quick snapshot, year in review. The way that our line of work monitors progress is based off participation rates and how we've done in years past. So what you'll see in front of you is the first year I was here, 22-23, and then a comparison to where we are now through 23-24. So just some quick updates. Meals, as you can see, this is comparing apples to apples, 143 days. Last year, 143. This year, meals are up significantly, so participation is strong. I don't think enrollment's changed too much, so those numbers seem pretty strong. Revenue is up, but as you can see, revenue per meal is down. What that means is reimbursement rates, how our program is funded, reimbursement rates have gone down year over year. So state funding and federal funding, they've done analysis and realized that they could probably take some of that reimbursement down, and that affects every single school district that participates in the breakfast and lunch program. As you can see, food cost is up, not necessarily directly in line with the participation of meals, but we've been seeing this trend the last 5 to 6 years. And labor costs, as you can see, is a really big jump from last year. One thing that we'll talk about a little bit later on, but we had so many vacancies when I first arrived in 22-23. We didn't really resolve it, and when we started to exit summer 23, we were like, we have to do something. Our staff is feeling a bit overworked, so this year we ended up bringing in a temporary staffing agency to mitigate the workload on our team. But that's what's showing that big increase to labor costs for this past year. Some quick discussion on wins. So every 3 to 5 years, our district is audited from the state. It's a pretty rigorous process. They come in for a full 2-day audit, but before that, they're asking for a lot of documents. I just want to commend the teams that were involved. So they looked at the Dolbear Elementary and the Woodville Elementary. Those teams were so gracious and obviously nervous at the start as going through their first ones, but they did a great job, and we passed. So hopefully we don't have to see another one of those for a few years. Another win this year, we had a big operational change. So some of our bigger elementary schools support our smaller schools. Historically, the Woodville has supported the Greenwood Elementary. We have since moved that from the Woodville over to Dolbear, and all those meals or a lot of the meals and prep work is done and satellited out. Just want to note a couple of promotions. Melissa Olson, we promoted to assistant kitchen manager over at Dolbear. She is a phenomenal team member. And Linda Sorrentino filled a kitchen manager position at the Galvin at the start of the school year. As I mentioned earlier, temporary staffing, we still look at that as a win. They're at this point, the team is completely threaded. It's a happy group in and out. We'd love to keep everyone. We also, at the beginning of the year, we made a purchase for vending machines at the Galvin because we didn't have the staff to necessarily open the snack bar, so we brought this in as an alternate line of service for students to have. And our most recent collaboration was with Culinary Arts. We had Miss Lacey and 8 to 10 of her seniors come up, prep with us all morning, and then they were asking, are we going to stay on the line? I go, absolutely, you're going to serve all through lunch. So it was hard work, and they got to see it. Just a few challenges for this year. Again, I can't stress enough the vacancies. It's our biggest piece, and we would love to get that resolved. Operating expenses, we're seeing it year in, year out that is going up, and as I briefly alluded to earlier, reimbursement rates is the unknown every year. So 5 years ago, your sales were weighted in a lot of cash that was coming in from our customers, right, our students. that is completely flipped. There's really not much of that coming in at all, except for some a la carte purchases, and we're heavily weighted on reimbursements. So that's kind of the year over year in review. I'm happy to answer any questions on that, if anyone has any.
Dustin, you mentioned staffing, which I know is just throughout the industry, it seems like. So what's kind of the plan moving forward to try to maybe make up some of those spots that are open and available?
So this group is up for negotiations well, we would start negotiating next year. I think pairing what the workload is and what the going rate is in similar industries, is that going to solve the problem for us overnight? But no, that's going to get us a step closer. It's this job has changed from pre-COVID. It is a lot. It's a compact amount of work that is into a lunch schedule that probably hasn't changed much. So there's multiple areas that need to adapt, but it's the workload on the team members that we bring in. It's significant. So I think the first step, at least from our lineup or from our eyes, is we'd have to look at wages.
Yeah. I mean, because if the staffing agency is able to fill these positions for us, is it just the fact that they're paying, and we're now paying just much more for those temporary workers, or?
We are paying more for temporary staff. I mean, they have a significant roster that we don't necessarily are getting. So.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
You mentioned like the workload, and I know at the Galvin next year they're planning to change around the schedule to hopefully make it less like just one after another. My only question that is, I assume that's positive for the staff, but does that increase the hours needed for the staff at all with the change in schedule they're planning?
I would have to see what their schedule is, but the conversations I've had with Ms. Webb is that it's not going to be this extreme change. We have at the Galvin, we have staff there between 1 and 2:15, so I don't see it being a major change, but that's certainly an area that helps. The high school and the Galvin have vastly different setups. The high school has 2 lunch periods with a half-an-hour gap in between. It's easy to prep. At the Galvin, it's a higher participation school with 4 back-to-back-to-back lunches. So the products are also can be different when it's a setup like that.
Hi. When you look at the revenue per meal and how it drops like 9 cents from one year to the other, is that a function of a different reimbursement rate that wasn't enough to kind of compensate for the food costs that were higher?
Right. So as I mentioned, that the reimbursement rates that were set up for fiscal year 23, those have gone down for fiscal year 24. We don't get notified of those reimbursement rates till usually August 30th.
Yeah.
So as far as forecasting out for FY25, we couldn't do that until September, the start of September.
And if I could just interrupt, they're set by the state, Kevin, but very late in the year. And Dustin's part of purchasing collaboratives, so he has to purchase out his menu items for the year well before he even knows what that reimbursement rate is.
Yeah.
But as he spoke, there has been a slight trend of that going down, because we're only reimbursed for meals served, not for what the cost of labor or materials is.
Is the school making any money from the vending machines? Because I've heard from my 6th graders how popular these vending machines are.
Right.
The place to be after school and at lunch and everywhere in between.
It was a bit overwhelming at the start, but they'll eventually offset the cost of themselves.
Yeah.
We started off between both machines making around $500 a day. Obviously, you have to pay for the products that are going in there.
Right.
That's trended down. We're probably between $250 and $300 per day. We had a slight issue in the beginning of the rollout with students getting access to other PIN numbers. We've since resolved that. That was a big headache. But we've added that the students have their unique their meal PIN, and then they have all have a unique
Vending machine.
ID number now
Okay.
instead of date of birth.
Yeah.
So
These are very popular machines. I just want everyone to know if they've not experienced them, they are very popular. My 2 sixth graders give them a stamp of approval. so.
I love that. Love that.
All right. Are we just going to move on? You have a second page?
So the second
Laura?
page, that's, I'm here to talk on the town chargeback request, if anyone has questions. This is what's been presented to us. We had a similar request last year. It's, yeah, if you have particular questions on how we would set this up, I'm happy to answer that. Just a few things I noted on the considerations. We expect to have a fairly big back and forth with this union for the next contract. So that's something to consider. Wages is one of the steps to get to a point where we're not filling our entire team with temporary staff. We would love to have, people that are going to stick around for the long run. Again, the reimbursement rates, we don't know what that's going to look like for next year. In-house, we have a significant amount of sustainability initiatives, whether it's composting. I think those products are significantly more expensive than going with styrofoam. And then again, just the rising food costs. So on the town chargeback request, my recommendation is really you have to look at this every single year. It's not something I would say to rubber stamp for years going forward, because 5 years ago you wouldn't do this.
Sure. Yep. No.
And also just to add to that, as you see on page 1, the trend is going from 14 to 15 to 24% increase every year. So there's been a lot of talk and discussion at every committee level about the balance in food services and the healthy revolving account. And since COVID, we recognize that's what's there. But when you're seeing these costs rise every year, 23, 24%, that balance is quickly going to be reduced. So we're just being thoughtful about maintaining sustainable changes to the program, and that we will come to you every year about what we can afford for this.
Appreciate it. In terms of reimbursement rate, and this may be your wheelhouse, Dustin, if not, Christine, jump on this. I'm just curious, when the state decided to take on sort of free meals for all districts, were they reimbursing at the rate at that time for sort of free lunch reimbursement rates? Because there was the initial program that sort of low-income families would sign up for, and then we would get reimbursed at a rate. Is that just what the state used when they kicked off as a reimbursement, or did they use something higher, lower?
So 3 to 4 years ago, they raised all those reimbursement rates. For 2 to 3 years, everything was reimbursed at the free rate.
Mm-hmm.
That's no longer the case. Well, I shouldn't say that. It's still reimbursed at the free rate, but as far as what that trend is gonna do going forward, I can't comment on. But from what I recall, years ago, it all was inflated at the start.
Yeah, that was my thought, is that the state has to be seeing the same numbers that you're seeing, which is once meals became sort of free, enrollment escalated. And so maybe at the state level, there was a bigger cash need than sort of it was initially forecast. And so if what we might see trending is that lower reimbursement, that's also going to cut into the bottom line and draw back on what we've seen as increases in revolving account. Okay. Thank you so much. Dr. Lyons.
I think I would just add to that, we are watching and we are concerned with the state reimbursement year over year. And as we're seeing kind of trends in the state, kind of where they're kind of tightening their belt and kind of chipping away little by little, things that are kind of question marks for us are labor, food costs, right, and the participation rate. So when you look at these things, not as each individual, but if you look at these things in concert with one another, right? And so Dustin hit on something that's critically important. The model that we've created, the time limits that we've created for lunch, the model that we've created for lunch, had a kind of a ballpark participation. in some instances, we're serving double the number of meals, right? So if you just think of this in regard to, having people to your home, right? If you have people to your home for a holiday and you're feeding 20, well, that following year, you're feeding 40, right? So it just doubled, right? And so the prep to make that happen day in and day out, it really takes its toll on staff. And I think one of the things that I think, and I don't want to speak for Christine, but that we've enjoyed about working with Dustin is that he leads from the front. So you will see Dustin cooking. You will see Dustin standing kind of shoulder to shoulder in the kitchen, working with personnel, working with students. And so, but he's also kind of very sharp in regard to his problem solving as well. So this kind of staffing kind of opportunity that Dustin created along with Christine and Tim O'Brien, I think was brilliant, because what it took was an overstaffed, or excuse me, an understaffed group that we had that were just exhausted, that were not kind of getting it done, and also didn't allow us to try any new recipes, try any new meals, to improve kind of what we were feeding students. So we've been able to kind of venture into that space because Dustin has problem solved in the way that he has. Fair?
No, I can't echo that enough. I mean, what Dustin has brought to the program, when I came here, we didn't have a full-time food service director. We couldn't afford it. The way the program was running pre-COVID, we couldn't afford to have the services. We all know our previous director was shared with Reading. So COVID changed a lot of things. It changed the program, but it also allowed us to bring Dustin in to the district with 14 years experience from another district. And we started over. We started from scratch. We looked at what was being prepared, and knowing that it was going to be harder on the staff, how can we think outside the box? And we just came up, we brainstormed, and we came up with a temp agency who has a little bit higher turnover of staffing that we couldn't reach. We were looking in Indeed, we were looking at all these staffing ways to get people to come and fill these roles, but that workforce doesn't exist right now. And anyone who goes food shopping or to the grocery store knows what the cost of food is. So that created this perfect storm. And we just wanted to be respectful. We understand that the balance in the account is large because of the way the funding was being reimbursed. And during COVID, the amount of meals were served was less for a year or two. But that has dramatically changed. And we need to be responsible about how we spend these funds over the next 2 to 3 years. I think we've talked about this at exhaustion during budget season, but I can't echo that enough, because the way this program is run is very different than before COVID. The product is better, the staffing is, the climate and culture of the kitchens is just, it's exciting. Fresh fruit, scratch cooking. I learned from Dustin. Dustin is an amazing chef. So we're just lucky to have Dustin O'Brien. Thank you.
Thanks.
Great.
Just a really quick question. What's the differential in pay between what we would normally pay at someone on staff versus what we pay the temp and versus what we pay the agency?
So we're on a scale with our contract, but as far as the temporary staffing agency, we're paying at $30 an hour.
And so we're paying the agency $30 an hour. What are they paying staff? Are they also paying staff 30?
I don't have access to
Okay.
their pay scale. Are you saying for our staff?
Well, so I wanted to understand what we pay our staff, and then what we're paying to the agency, and then what the agency is paying to the staff that they're bringing in.
So I can't comment on what
Right.
the agency is paying their own team. Our step starts, I believe, this year starts around $16.58.
Okay.
For step one,
Yeah.
part-time. There's 5 to 6 scales, and there's 6 steps. I think I might be off a little bit, but
Yeah.
I think it's like 16.58 to the full top step might be around 27.
Okay.
But that 27 is a 40-hour kitchen lead of a high school.
Because it's tough to fill, because some positions only work 2 or 3 hours a day. Some are 4. So some people who work for a temp agency only want to work a couple hours a day. So it fills that need. So that's why we've contracted with this agency for that. But we are looking to fill the full-time positions, which are benefit eligible. which is hence the document that you have in front of you tonight.
So that total package would be similar to what we're paying the staffing agency.
Right.
And the difference between a staffing agency and kind of coming to work for WPS is, one of the most significant differences is the flexibility, right? So the staffing agency just brings people in. It's like a churn. You know, it's an attractive, no benefits, high hourly rate or relatively high hourly rate. But anyway, more to follow on that, but great question.
Mr. Markham.
Thank you. Following up on, Christine, the comment that you made first prior to the last group regarding the chargebacks on the second page. The chargeback request here is for fiscal year '24, as we're closing out fiscal year '24. So are you recommending this? So
We are.
what's the
Dustin-
specificity around what the recommendation is for tonight?
Justin and I have looked into the accounts for fiscal '24, and to close out, we are making the recommendation to fund this amount, the $192,609, for 1 year only, that he can afford this year. But
Right.
to preface that, about what we've cautioned the committee about making an agreement moving forward with all of these unknowns, the reimbursement costs. That's why we're making the recommendation for 1 year for fiscal '24.
Right, and so the reason why I was asking is because we discussed this at the last finance subcommittee meeting, and just wanted there to be some clarity around what was being asked as we close out fiscal '24, and exactly your second point, and the point that Dustin made as well, right? That this is not, this will be a sort of an annual conversation that we'll have at the beginning of the year, we'll have in the budget process, and we'll have as we close the year. But
Definitely.
the recommendation that's being made tonight that we will vote on, which did come out of Finance Subcommittee, is 192,609.74.
Yes.
And if I could add any point, my recommendation, if this is going to be an annual discussion, it has to happen on the tail end of the year, because three of these four costs are fixed costs based off of projections. So we have a clearer picture in June than we would have in September. Does that make sense?
Oh, sure. My only point around that is that we need to have the conversation a couple of times, especially during budget process. Because during the budget process, we have to understand what the June 30th, balances are going to be in all the revolving funds. So it needs to be fluid enough, but
Right.
determined at this point in the year.
And I just want to highlight 2 points. We usually get these costs from the town in June or the end of May, which we did. And then we also I think it's important just to highlight that Dustin put underneath that the 4 things to consider, and we're going to bring that up every year, is that we're entering into contract negotiations with this group for 25. Well, they have 1 more year, so we're starting in the fall for 26. But reimbursement rates still at the state level. As we know, all the COVID funding sources for the state level are really drying up. And sustainability initiatives. We have partnered with the town. We have made a commitment to be green, to be the best we can in those avenues, but it comes at a cost. And that's something to consider every year. And then food costs. I just wanted to make sure we highlight those 4 issues.
So with that in mind, Mr. Chair, I would make a motion to support the administration's recommendation that we have a town chargeback for food service for $192,609.74.
Fair enough. Motion's been made and seconded. Those in favor? And voted unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dustin.
Thank you.
Dustin.
Thank you, Dustin.
Much appreciated. Thank you for your patience.
Of course.
Next, I'm going to continue to take my items out of order. I'd like to welcome Joanne Marks to the table. Joanne Marks is our Science, Technology, and Engineering Curriculum Coordinator. She's a bit of a rock star. She's the real deal.
Lindsay
And,
Mosca is
Lindsay's
also
joining
joining
us
us.
as
I came from
well.
a soccer field.
And nicely done, Linz. Are you at Victory Field, Linz?
Can you
It
hear?
was a President's Cup game for my son, and so they won. It was
Oh, there
great.
you go.
But here I am enjoying the weather to talk with you fine people. So thank you for having me.
Nice. Are you at Devon's or are you in Watertown?
Victory.
Okay, good. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. And so I'd like to turn it over to them to talk about science, technology, and engineering curriculum review, along with Kara.
Yeah, this was really, we had, as we talked before at previous meetings, the science curriculum review has been happening throughout this year and planning for it happened last year. Joanne and Lindsay have been leading that effort K through 12. And they had presented kind of an update in March, and our goal was to come back before the end of the school year just to share with you where we're at this point in the year. So just a couple shifts on timeline, which I appreciate. I think we went into this with the idea, let's do this right and get this right. And K through 12 is a really big, it's just a broad span of work. And sometimes, so that was the encouragement that Joanne and Lindsay got from me, take your time, do it right, adjust as you need to, be flexible throughout. So they'll talk a little bit about some of those adjustments, but overall, just a really great effort by Joanne and Lindsay. Really, really strong work this year.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. As Doug mentioned, I'm Joanne Marks. I'm the 5 through 12 Science Curriculum Coordinator. And I'm just going to, I don't know how well she can mic. So as they said, that's Lindsay Mosca for K through 4. Sure, oh, that's, yeah.
Kara.
Oh. So as Kara mentioned, we've been deep in this work of the science, technology, and engineering curriculum review this year. We're really proud of the accomplishments that we've had so far. We still have work to do, as we'll discuss tonight. And I'm really grateful to the investment of time and energy from our whole department, K through 12. Science teachers, engineering teachers at every level have been involved in different parts of the process, and we really feel good about their involvement and making sure that that puts us in the best foot forward moving forward. All of our work is being guided from the vision that we developed in December or January. We shared it with you last time. Oh, that's Lindsay. So we're not going to read over the whole thing right now, but this was a collaborative effort with a lot of different stakeholders in the district to get to this point where we have a vision similar to what we read for the Wakefield, public schools at the start of every school committee meeting, right? It helps guide our work and our decisions. So,
Joanne, I just want to
yes.
remind the committee, because you were the first group to bring in students as reps on the curriculum review team. I just think that's really important. I loved that idea. And to be at the meeting where the students were there contributing, talking about their experiences, contributing to the vision.
Yeah, they kept us focused.
Yeah, it was really, yeah, so I feel like that's going to be a thing now. Yeah, on all
It was
the
really,
reviews, yeah.
They were the best wordsmiths that we had.
Yeah, they were the best wordsmiths, that's
Yeah.
true. I think that I was speaking to that in the sense of bringing in as many stakeholder
Yeah.
groups and giving student voice kind of an equal footing there, I think was really powerful in our process. So we had a pretty, solid timeline going in, and we've reviewed this with you before. We started planning last year. We've looked at a lot of data. We've done research and kind of current science education. We created our vision. We explored the landscape of what's out there for science curriculum in the marketplace, which, to remind you, compared to math and ELA, is very, very limited. And then we kind of selected a few different options to field test, and our teachers have been actively field testing different curriculum materials in the last couple of months. We were planning on having a consensus selection meeting, kind of deciding and packaging it all up this May, but at Kara's encouragement, we were really thoughtful with our timeline. We don't want to rush forward and just do change for change's sake. We want to make sure we make the right choice for the district. And so we decided to slow it down, and we'll get into a little bit about what our plan, what that looks like, why at different levels we're going to be looking at some other options. And so kind of the rest of that timeline from here on has shifted, and we'll speak to that right now. All right, Lindsay, I don't know if you can see the slides, but you're up.
I can. Yeah, I got my notes with me. I was prepared. So for K4, we talked last time about how the really unique situation for how we're doing lab-based science for elementary school age children with our science teachers pushing into the classroom really created a situation where most boxed and packaged curriculums for science in elementary school are designed for classroom teachers who are doing all the things and require an amount of time that we don't have based on our model. And really what we learned through this process was that what is going to work best for our model is for our teachers to have really good guideposts on following our vision, keeping our lessons hands-on, really starting to incorporate at an age-appropriate level the phenomenon that we're trying to get into our science education, and having them curate and develop a scope and sequence of high-quality materials that make sense for Wakefield. And so we, looked over the small number of high-quality, full-package science curriculums that were available, and came to the conclusion pretty quickly that none of these were going to really meet our need based on time, and it wouldn't be worth adopting something and only using very small pieces of it. And so K4 has landed on using Mystery Science as a base for lesson resources. There are some engaging videos. There's some new anchor phenomenon that they've layered onto their scope and sequence. The teachers use that as a resource, but not as a complete product. It's a nice, relatively inexpensive resource that serves as a nice base for teachers to pull from. And then over the summertime, we've allocated some hours for our science teacher team, along with Marguerite Ogden-Brown, who's going to be our new K4 STEM coordinator, to work on developing and curating that scope and sequence with the goals of adjusting coverage and aligning those units to the nonfiction content in our new ELA curriculum, EL. We've did a really deep dive into that content, and we've identified where the nonfiction is specifically about science in each grade level, and we are rearranging what the science teachers teach and when to better align with that. And then we're also having them incorporate some introductory phenomenon to units on an increasing scale as the kids get older, moving into the middle school. And then just recently, hot off the presses, Smithsonian Science is a elementary curriculum that is sold in a modular way. And so, and it was just got a newly rated green by EdReports, which is a high quality instructional material metric that we really take seriously when we're looking at materials. And since that kind of just came on the scene, we are using some grant funding to get a pilot unit. Our grade 2 science teachers are going to be looking at testing that out. Again, the Smithsonian Science as a program would not be something that would make sense for us to incorporate across the board because we don't have the time to, but because it's sold in a modular way, it could enhance some of the units that we feel like would be worthwhile. And so we're exploring that as a resource as well.
I don't know if you want to do questions by level or hear it all and then ask.
I think we can go through it all. I think I saw you have 7 slides, so I think it'd be easy to get through it. Yeah.
Okay, so that's our K4. And then for our 5 through 8, as I mentioned, we've been field testing this spring. All of our, and this is where I talk about how great our team is, all of our science teachers, grades 5, 6, 7, and 8, were willing and eager to field test new curriculum resources. And so we're kind of depending on grade level and the different trips that are going on and pre-MCAS. It's been a bit staggered this spring, but they've been diving in and trying new things. We have, through some grant funding, the opportunity to continue some of that field testing in the fall, and that's part of why we chose to extend our timeline. So we're going to continue, and grades 6 and 8 are going to be field testing additional resources in the fall. Grade 7 is not listed there, but they've also actually tested that same curriculum last year. So it's not that we're leaving them out, it's that they've already done it. And then we've moved our consensus decision meeting. We don't want it to be just this long running. We want to have a conclusion and to make a decision. So we've shifted that to December of 2024. We hope to have more information, more data from that field testing, and potentially more awareness of what it is, if anything comes on the market, and make a decision at that point. For our professional development as a department next year, I'm really excited about leading this book study on ambitious science teaching, which is very much in line with our vision, and talks about kind of all the different components that we want to have in our science curriculum, and talks about the skills, the pedagogy involved in doing that. And so even while we are field testing, we're going to be growing our teacher skills through PD to support that work. And then at the Galvin, specifically through some grant work this year and hopefully continuing into next year, we're going to be growing our computer science unit in our STEM courses, in our 6, 7, and 8 STEM classes. That wasn't directly related to the science curriculum piece, but is in the overarching curriculum review process. So that's Galvin. And then a very similar story at the high school. We are the biology teachers, which is typically a grade 9 class, are field testing right now a new biology curriculum, and they will be getting some training in June to field test another curriculum or some more resources in the fall. So similar story, we're going to just extend and test more things without feeling rushed at the end of the spring just to get it in. We want to do it thoughtfully and for the teachers to have adequate professional development in order to test it, so that they have a chance of doing it well. And then same consensus decision meeting, we're going to move to December. A lot of our work at the high school level has been in field testing for biology, but also looking at our program of studies and our course offerings for the whole science department at the high school. And we've done a lot of work with that. We're really excited about some new and improved course offerings, and hoping and planning on presenting those we have some work to do as far as drafting the descriptions and things like that, and presenting those in next year's program of studies. But on a whole, the goal would be increasing choice within our coursework for students, improving the consistency of rigor and expectations across the courses, especially in elective courses for juniors and seniors. And those choices are very much based on student feedback and student interests that we've collected over the last few years. And then the 9 through 12 group will also be participating in that book study. So that is where we are. Happy to take any questions.
Great. Any questions? Melissa?
Yeah, Melissa.
So, gotta say, Mystery Science, everybody loves Mystery Dave. He's great. The Mystery Science curriculum is one that we used when my daughter was in 4th grade and from home when we didn't get science from Wakefield. So I think that's a great thing. I'm curious what additional phenomenon you're looking to bring into the Mystery Dave, because my understanding of Mystery Dave is that he's a phenomenon-based science curriculum. Like you start with what could this possibly be, and then go from there. And I'm wondering what other things you're trying to add on top of that.
Yeah, I think Lindsay can probably take this one. Lindsay? Yeah, I can try, but she's more familiar with it.
Sure. So Mystery Science just this year incorporated a little bit more of a longer storyline into their curriculum, which they're calling the anchor phenomenon. So it's not just
like
a hook video. Yeah. So it's not just like, oh, the beginning of the lesson is this cool thing. Don't you want to learn more? It's a longer term exposure to solving a bigger problem and learning science along the way. And so they've been adding that on to their curriculum product. So we're looking to explore that. And what we're hoping to do is that by the time kids are done with 3rd and 4th grade science, that they have some exposure that's more similar to what they're going to see on the revamped MCAS in grade 5, because they're going to be getting storyline-based assessment in MCAS there. And so we want to gradually add that on. The kids, for instance, like in K and 1, they only see their science teacher once a week, right? And so it's really hard to have them remember and engage with one phenomenon over a long period of time. So we're going to be kind of gradually layering that on for kids in a schedule and age-appropriate way so they're prepared. But it's really, it's a longer-term piece. And the science teachers currently pick from lots of different high-quality resources, and so they'll be kind of looking for the sort of best that is available for a phenomenon to anchor different units. It may not just be what Mystery Science offers. It might be something that an NGSS badge unit or something from a new Open Science material or
Or the
sort of all
NOAA
kinds
stuff,
of other
yeah.
resources that they pull from. Yeah.
Is it going to be more hands-on? Because the mystery science stuff tends to be very video focused. I'm worried about
Yeah.
the littles
Yeah,
actually paying attention to the video.
Oh yeah, no, that's actually one of the primary reasons why we say that mystery science is a resource but not a curriculum that we use. The science teachers, we have a lesson planning structure as part of our curriculum review that's like, what percentage of the class period should be the hands-on experiment, what is the introduction, and kind of modeling kind of like an ideal lesson in those 40 minutes, what should we be planning for? And so that's why, like, for the most part, the teachers are not just running through a mystery science lens, they're choosing elements from it and kind of using that scope and sequence as a basis for where to pull materials from and add to it.
Okay. And then my last question, what else did you guys field test in elementary besides mystery science? Or did you just field test mystery science?
Yeah, I mean, they were previously using mystery science, and so it didn't really require much of a field test for them. It was really a matter of kind of deciding on that was something interesting to them. They spent a little bit more time with Generation Genius as a baseline. They looked at PhD science and Amplify science as well. And both PhD science and Amplify science were really, it's a lot. And it was really just too much based on what we needed. A huge chunk of those programs are actually based in nonfiction literacy. With regards to science, which we don't need because we get a lot of that from our EL curriculum, and we don't have time for it. So that's those are the things that they looked at.
Thank you. My next question was, what did you field test besides Twig Science in the middle school?
Sure. So currently at the middle school, we're field testing Twig Science, and then with the increased time in the fall, we're going to be looking at Open Science units.
Okay. So it was just Twig at the middle school. You didn't test
So far, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Thanks.
There aren't. I mean,
There's not a lot.
There's not a lot.
Yep.
So, and Twig is not yet green on Ed Reports, but it's also not yet rated on Ed Reports.
Right.
So that went in the casting the wide net and looking for what is out there that may be up and coming
Yep.
to try to get ahead of it.
Did the teachers dislike it, or did the students do you have data that says that
Yeah.
we should extend our field testing to look at other stuff because this didn't work, or is it just
No,
like
that
this?
was the plan. So we always wanted to test more than one, but we just didn't have, when you look at how much time is left in the year and our process,
Yeah.
we didn't have enough, and we wanted to do it thoroughly and right by the teachers, the students, and the curriculum. So that's why we decided to just take more time and look at Open Science in the fall instead, when everyone can be fresh and more trained on it. As far as data, that's a good point. As we're doing this field testing, the teachers have, it's like an 8 or 9 question feedback form based essentially from our vision, looking for, how hands-on is today. This is a daily form that they fill out for feedback. Hands-on, is it phenomena-based? Are students talking with each other and just using evidence? There's just a lot of truly taken from our vision for the teachers to quickly record on that day for the kids in front of me, in that lesson, did I see this? And then also just notes about there wasn't enough time, whatever experiences they have. So I've got both digital and paper versions of that from the teachers. And then on a weekly basis, we ask the students very similar questions. And they could either fill it out digitally or in paper. And so that's all still coming in because there are classes still testing.
you're still
So
testing, yeah.
we have initial kind of feedback on it, but it's nothing presentable at this point.
They're still testing.
Yeah.
And in the high school, what are you testing for biology?
Sure. So right now for biology, they are testing, I forget the full name of it, but it's through BSCS. I forget the full name. And then in the fall, they will also be doing Open Science.
Okay. And the book study that you guys are doing, is that going to be done by December when you guys have the consensus meeting, or is that going to be just a full year?
I think either, no matter where we land, the book study will be, so that's a year-long professional development plan, and that is to support the work no matter, in our vision, regardless of where we land from curriculum materials.
Last question.
Sure.
Back to the vision.
Yeah, back to the vision.
Is you talk about it being student-centered STE classes.
Mm-hmm.
Are we moving towards a place where it's more Montessori based, or is it still going to be more guided? It sounds like it's going to be more guided.
It has to
but
be
it-
guided, I
yeah.
think, in the sense that we have our standards and we want it to be we want to create similar opportunities for experiences no matter what classroom you're in. And I think by student-centered, we mean that there's a lot of more student sense making. So we're giving them a phenomenon, we're giving them a common shared experience that they can discuss, that they can analyze the data. It's not just data that a teacher found and is saying, hey, let's graph this. It's the data they're collecting, and then they're going to graph it. And it's not going to be perfect because real data is messy.
Yeah.
And like living it more, the students are doing that work as opposed to, hey, here, let's study this thing.
And as you're doing the field testing, are you being mindful of looking out for our multi-language learners, our kids that need tiered support systems, and
Sure,
what the
so-
differentiation looks like within each of those lessons?
Yeah, so that's definitely part of the teacher questions is like, how do you feel the supports are for you in supporting those students? That's in part of the daily feedback. And then we have a way for the teachers to code the student feedback as it comes in. So we can look for trends in, for our multilingual learners, for example, how did they feel about this curriculum, like that category of students as compared to the whole. And then the same with students with disabilities.
Okay.
So yes, I mean, I think that's part of our goal is to be reaching all students. Yeah, it's good. Good
Thank
point though, important one.
All right, does anyone have
Sorry, I
any
didn't mean to
questions that
monopolize.
Melissa didn't ask?
Exciting, I get it, Melissa. I
Yeah.
can talk science all day.
I know. me
Kevin?
too.
So, what's the plan to introduce more computer science units? Because that almost seems like I imagine that, computer science is almost like a side category in terms of.
So it has been thought of that way for many, many years. But I think what most people would tell you now is that the more it's integrated all the time in all the work we do, and the more that we can integrate it into all of our curriculum, honestly, if I was preaching from the better off we would be. So specifically for the bullet point that was in my slides it was about Galvin, looking at the STEM classes. So those STEM courses are in grades 6, 7, and 8. They are typically more design engineering courses, and they already incorporate some computer science in regards to like block-based coding. If students are coding their Sphero robots, or they are they're doing the Hummingbird in 8th grade right now, and there's coding involved in that. But in this regard, the DLCS and the computer science is so much more than just coding and programming. It's really thinking in an algorithmic or programmatic way. And so for the particular bullet point there is we've gone through a visioning process, kind of secondary to this process. A smaller group has been going through a visioning for DLCS K-12 process because we don't really have someone who's looking at that big picture. Since computer science falls within science, technology, engineering at the high school level, I've just kind of scooped it up into the middle school as well. And we had a grant through DESE this year to create that vision, to look at curriculum that are out there, and how can we incorporate more computer science into all of our courses, but we can't necessarily add classes. We don't have as much staffing for that. So right now we're looking at grade 6 STEM as a place where we can tighten up the units that we're doing, maybe shift a couple of units that we're doing, and we're looking to purchase some Lego Prime kits, and we're looking at a few different grant and funding sources for that to support kind of more of a curriculum for building the digital literacy and computer science pieces that go with, because there are K-12 standards in that. So it was all kind of led through DESE, and we participated in the process. So specifically there, we're looking at grade 6 and hoping to grow it into grades 7 and 8 in STEM and have it be more comprehensive, be more of a overarching plan. But as part of that work, we did mapping I met with all the different curriculum coordinators to look at, here are the DLCS standards for 6 through 8. Where is it happening in middle school social studies? Where is it happening? Because some of the things, I met with Melissa Tarnas, a health teacher, to talk about they're teaching cybersecurity. That's one of the DLCS standards. So it does actually fit in a lot of places, and I think our goal is to give it more attention in the STEM class because we can. It was a long-winded answer to a fairly short question. Sorry. You got me excited.
If I could add to that, right, the challenge here is that we're trying to fit it in where and when possible, because what's happened is the Department of Ed has scheduled more minutes than we have in the day, right? And so the question is, if we can't schedule it like it's being prescribed, how can we get it in other ways, in other places, right? And the example that Joanne used was a perfect one in regard to, the work is similar work is being done in other areas. We need to identify it, circle it, and say, okay, that's still off the list. But the list is still long. This has been an ongoing conversation about engineering, right? Science, technology, and engineering, right? And so the standards include engineering, but again, a standard science class is 60 minutes. Where do you fit in engineering? Which is why Joanne's differentiating between the two.
So I just have a quick, and it goes right to this. I'll skip it. So in elementary, I know that when my daughter was in elementary, I don't know if this has changed at all, that the librarians did all of the technology classes and reaching to the technology standards. Have we incorporated the technology standards into report cards, or is it being addressed by the science teachers or by their?
Yeah, so this is, and I mean, I think this is an area where we know we need to look. And so through this grant, we were able to have a team look at grades 6 through 8. Mm-hmm. We've just applied for the continuation grant to look at grades 3 through 5. So I think it's definitely happening by the library media specialists at the elementary schools. How consistent that is across elementary schools and which standards are being highlighted and are they all being addressed, I think remains a question and just requires a look. But so that's our next. Those are kind of future steps for us. We're going to look at 3 through 5 next year. We're as long as the grant goes through, we have a team. The library media specialists are all going to join us in conjunction with Katie Williams, who's been part of that work this year, who is the Galvin library media specialist. And so that's coming, but it's too much to do all at once because so there's the science, technology, engineering standards, and then there's the digital literacy, computer science standards. Those are two separate things. Mm-hmm. And so we're working on the the STE standards, and then no one's. Teachers have been picking and saying, "Oh, we should do this. It's in the standards," but there's no. We're working to cast a larger umbrella and making sure that we know where everything's happening and we can confirm that it is happening and well. So that's the future work.
And that's in addition to the next generation science standards that we're doing just in regular science classes, right?
Yeah, that's different. Yeah, they're two different things.
Lindsay's behind you shaking her head.
Yeah, that's right, Lindsay.
I concur.
Pete?
I just have a quick question.
Sure.
The MCAS that the 8th graders recently took in
Yeah.
science, was that supposed to be based on what they learned, or what was the, I didn't understand. Normally I ask my son, oh, how did the MCAS go? And, just to describe my son, normally these things are he's like, oh, it's simple. And I asked him about that one, and I kind of got a very different response. It seemed like some of the material he didn't think he had seen before. So I was just curious, is that supposed to be aligned to what we're teaching today? Or?
It is,
Okay.
and it's also what is taught in grades 6, 7, and 8. It's a 3-year bank of information.
Okay.
So
his response may have told me what you're trying to accomplish, which is maybe some changes to the curriculum would be useful, because he's usually a person where I get it was the simplest test ever. And I didn't he didn't seem to whatever he was supposed to know for that test. I'm not sure he felt that, obviously I don't know how he scored, but he didn't feel it stuck in the same way that maybe, the English and the math had for him.
Yeah. Yep. I would say overall, we've looked at our MCAS scores and other data as well throughout, and I would say it's pretty steady. So I think there's definitely room for improvement. And I think Lindsay alluded to it earlier, the MCAS are going to be changing in science, and quite dramatically, with more of a storyline test where you're given a scenario and you need to apply what you've learned, which is challenging. So all of these reasons are good that we're looking to shift. Good support for our shift.
That's great. Kevin?
For the high school program of studies, usually you've got bio, chemistry, physics, and here you're saying that we're going to increase choice for students. What does that look like? Does that mean that we're going to be having different courses sophomore, junior year? That would be like an alternate pathway?
Yeah.
as
So
opposed to
our
chemistry and
current
physics,
idea
or-
right now, and again, we've kind of done the work and have a lot more work to do before November, where we start really pulling together the program of studies to present it to school committee in January. So it's a bit early to speak to it, but is to look at, so most freshmen take biology and then would traditionally in Wakefield take chemistry, and we're looking to opening that up to say to giving students choice about choosing chem or environmental or physics next. We would need to look at a lot of pieces like the prerequisites for that course and things like that, but not that they couldn't just continue that same path that they have, but that there might be alternative ways to go about fulfilling the state requirement for their 3 years of science. In addition to that, the electives that we currently offer, a half-year oceanography elective and a half-year astronomy elective for juniors and seniors. And we're looking to increase the number of half-year electives we offer for those upper-level students, including, and this gets into student interest. Forensics has been a hot one, marine biology. These are things we've heard from students over the last few years, and so we want to offer those courses as well. So the inclusion of more choice looks a few different ways, but more to come.
I just want to make sure we don't have any questions this side of the table. It's been very heavy over here. No? We're okay.
I think they've been covered.
Okay. Back to Melissa.
So the last thing is just a recommendation that if you're looking for student feedback on what electives to offer, not just looking at the high school kids, but since the middle schoolers are coming up, but to talk to them as well.
Yeah, so part of a survey we did earlier this winter was to grade 8 and 9 students, and to whom this would be first available to. And we asked all of them through their science classes about what course are they planning on taking, what course, if they had a choice, would they take, and then from a list of, I think, 12 or 13 electives with little descriptions, how interested would you be in taking this course? So all of this is based in that, precisely, yeah.
Okay. Just maybe a couple of comments and then a question. First, in your elementary, in the K through 4, where you talk about tying into the ELA curriculum, I think I keep going back. When I see things like that, I go back to sort of the frog section that I saw this year when we toured the schools. And I just love the ability to sort of make use of time in that way, and how much stronger you draw those connections when you do them sort of through multiple sort of modalities.
Yeah.
And I saw how excited that class was that we were in, and so this feels like it's hitting the mark, and that's exciting to see. I also applaud your sort of your forethought, or your seeing that sort of maybe you were outpacing what your intention was, and so however you sort of decided as a group to kind of just pull back the reins a little bit and just be, realize that you needed a moment to breathe and maybe just be a pinch more thoughtful. I just applaud that, because so often we can get sort of myopic and just go like full on bore. So I applaud that. Thank you for being thoughtful in how you sort of apply this. The question I might have is, in just at a high level, I know we do curriculum updates every so often as a matter of course to sort of perfect the craft. But as you look at how we're teaching science now in the district and what you see where we want to be, I'm sure you found areas where you think we're doing things well already, and you're seeing things that you're maybe really excited for, where things have changed, ideas have changed, and where we can really sort of go at it full force. Could you maybe just talk a little bit about what we're doing well and what you're really aiming for? Maybe it's computer science. Maybe we've already talked about it. Maybe it was...
No, I could, absolutely. It's a great question, and thank you for the opportunity. I would say some of the things that we're doing very well and it's exciting to share, is a lot of the connections that we're making in the community to what's going on in the classroom. And I think there's been a flurry of that recently, especially at the high school level. Today, actually, we had, and this is Catherine Cameron, one of our engineering teachers at the high school. This was her, I give her the credit for kind of leading this charge, but she connected with the support of the admin team with the architects and the construction with Bond and SMMA and Left Field, and orchestrated essentially a presentation today for our principals of engineering students with the leads of those three groups, the Wakefield team, and I was able to join them as well, and it was fantastic. So these three folks talked about the Wakefield project specifically. They gave these students updates on the build and like what they're seeing out the window. They talked about their careers and what their job was as part of the larger team, what their pathway was to getting there, and what their process is and how, and it was just really, I learned so much about not only their work and like how extensive all the teams are and all the communication is, but the students had great questions. And I think they had an opportunity to ask, so what's going on there? Why is there this thing there? And like that, our hope and Catherine's hope is to bring that back multiple times, at least 3 times a year over the next few years, so that these engineering students become they have the knowledge that they can then share with other students about what we're seeing going on at the window. So I think that's a kind of right on mind because it happened today, but I think this focus on what careers are out there, how do we connect to our community, is teachers are doing that at all levels, and I think bringing in experts at the elementary levels too, just to feel that it's not just teachers, it's not just, there's so many things you could be. I learned about new engineers today that I had never heard of, and I've been doing this for a long time. So things like that I think is at the work of our teachers, honestly. They're the ones that have these ideas, they hear the connections, and they make it happen. There's a second part to your question.
Where do you think our challenges are, or where can we
Yeah.
make the most strides? Sort of?
I think where we can make the most strides is to that student sense-making piece. I think so. We have so many veteran teachers that are so expert in their field and have been doing this a long time. And I think for many of us, when we think about the way we learn science, we were told science. And what we know and what brain science and what science research and education shows us is that students are going to develop so much more by figuring it out themselves. And that takes time. That takes a lot of trust for the teacher to be able to say, go ahead, and then step back and wait and wait. And the students struggle, and that's good. But you're there to support them if they need it. And so that's a piece where our teachers want to do that, but I think they need the support, and I think they need a curriculum resources to help them get there. So I think in talking to teachers, like, yes, we want a phenomenon-based curriculum, that's awesome, but we're also not curriculum developers, and that huge overarching storyline is impossible. It's not impossible to create, but when you're teaching day to day, you can't step back and have that huge image of of the whole storyline. So finding the right resources and then supporting the teachers to do what they want to, but as far as what they know is right, but is so hard. So
That's great.
That's where we're going.
Good, exciting.
Yeah.
Thank
Exciting.
you. Anyone else? Nope. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very
Thanks,
much.
guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll be back. I'll be back with with lots of news, I guess, right? Program of studies and some plan.
Yeah, you've done, Lindsay and Andrew have just done a phenomenal job, because there really isn't, with the other content areas, as much of a push with grant funding or networking with other, so that's some of the things that we talked about too, that you don't want to kind of go out on a limb and do this take on this random resource that doesn't have a lot of local support or other districts where we've seen some good results, because things are really just starting to come out a little bit more. So I appreciate the pacing of this. So I think when the time is right, some good decisions.
And I think our
will be
team
made.
feels really good about it too.
Yeah.
The teachers feel good about it too. So. Thanks, everybody.
Great.
so much.
Have a good
Thank
night.
you. Thank you, Lindsay.
Thanks, Lindsay.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
I could listen to her talk all night about science.
Probably not the only one.
Sure. I don't know if there's anything else tonight.
I think we have a couple slides.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
It's not me.
Thank you so much. Much appreciated. Again, I think, one of the benefits that you don't see, right, is in when the curriculum coordinators get together, they learn from one another, right? And so this notion of including students, not only in the curriculum kind of work, but also in a book study, and then getting feedback from the students, that only has to be done well once. And then the next curriculum that's up in the curriculum review cycle, someone's going to say, oh, well, of course you're going to involve students, right? That's a concrete example of just one iteration about just getting better and better and better, right? And so just moving along on my list, and so I want to give a very quick update. I'm going to channel my best Tim O'Brien, no one's as good as Tim, but I'll kind of do a quick update. And so we kind of record aerial kind of pit shots weekly. And so what's happening here, what's happening behind the high school is they're doing what they call pad prep, right? So they're preparing the earth and the ground where the construction, where they're going to build the new high school. They're also setting up there, if you see those, I have a laser pointer here. So you see right here, so this is a double culvert, right? So that culvert is, and there are concrete sections here that are all kind of stacked up, right? I feel like I'm looking at like a satellite image here. It's like, but those concrete boxes are going to be connected together, and they are going to run from the back corner of the softball field through the outfield directly across and tie in to the drainage on the other side of the street. And so that's an engineered improvement that has been made and kind of worked on and created not only with the architects but also the town as well. So that's what you're gonna see next. So when, for example, the women's softball season is over, they're gonna kind of cut a trench in the outfield. Not to worry, they're gonna leave it better than they found it, right? But then they're going to kind of line up and kind of install all these boxes, and then they're gonna run it across. They're also gonna change the elevation of this here. This elevation is gonna come up about 4 feet, right? And so, because at street level, if you notice when you drive around the school, you drive down into the parking lot. So they have to kind of raise up the level that they're gonna build the building at. So so the next steps are, continue to pad prep, put in the trench, and then kind of they'll move some of these machines, and then they'll start doing other site work. But that's kind of where we are right now, just a very kind of quick overview. Happy to answer any questions that I might be able to. Again, not as good as Tim O'Brien, but channeling my best Tim O'Brien right now.
I'm curious from a picture standpoint. Are those stationary cameras that are up on top of the roof?
I don't believe so. No, I
Okay.
believe that either it's done by drone or someone was up there.
All right.
My guess is that it's done by drone.
Okay. If
Right.
it's someone, let's make sure they're wearing fall protection.
I don't know. Wearing fall protection, did you
yeah.
say?
You have
Yeah.
to take a training, Doug.
Yeah.
Protection training.
Fall protection from the roof?
There's a flat roof, no rail. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Because I don't know, that would be disastrous.
Yeah.
Right.
Tim
Good
sometimes
feedback.
walks around.
Duly noted.
It's
Duly
great
noted.
to see.
Let's say we're not sending anyone up there. Let's just say we'll send the drone up there.
That's
It's a little bit safer. Rather crash the drone than have any problem with personnel.
It's great to see the drills from Farm Street and know that they're sort of working on the pilings and the foundation.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff going on back there.
There's a lot of stuff happening at this site every single day. And the SMMA personnel that are on site managing the laborers and kind of all the trades out here is just amazing, right? It's like how it's choreographed. It's really something special. So that's a very quick update. Happy to answer any question that anyone might have at this point. Yes?
Is there an increased cost with the new trench?
No, part of the project. It's part of the project as designed. And so our town engineer was really kind of, I think, the person that, I think that they were talking about putting in something smaller. And Bill Renault, our town engineer, kind of had a hand in kind of making this the size that it was. And I think on the town side, DPW, they also worked in kind of laying this out and working in collaboration with SMMA as well. But no, it is part of the project, not a separate cost. So.
Thank you.
Just other information, I'm hearing rumblings, I don't have anything certain at this point in time, that the site down the street will be, the entrance to the Vogue down the street will be coming online soon. At the rate we're moving, it'll probably be when we're out of school.
I drove by there today. You would not know that.
Yeah, okay. So that's a quick.
Okay.
So, just again, continuing on our list, Christine, for budget update?
So just getting ready to end fiscal '24. We don't have a financial report tonight, but fiscal '25, we are working with the town to get that into Munis, which is our financial management system, so we can purchase as soon as I always say Happy New Year on July 1st, because in central office, that's our new year. So we'll be kind of operating in 2 fiscal years at the same time for the month of July. But I'll be bringing you some updates, probably not to the August meetings, about how we close out '24. But it's really busy in central office right now. But super glad that the budget was approved, and now we're getting ready to go and get ready for fiscal '25.
So just a few other comments and updates. Shay alluded to this very quickly. This is senior week. So tonight is awards night at Galvin. It was at 6:30. And so tomorrow night is the Grand March. And so that's going to be at 5:15 at the Upper Common, right? And it's also the prom. And also the all-night party, right? That will take place as well. And we need to give, a shout out to Kim Smith and all that kind of lead the coordination of the all-night party, because that's really something that keeps kids safe. We really appreciate that. The kids the next morning when they come back, they leave like all glammed up, and when they come back, they like regress back to their normal age, right? And so it's great. It's great to watch. But special thanks to everyone involved in kind of making that happen. Thursday is class gathering, and so there'll be there'll be food at Landrigan from 12 to 2. That's for seniors. And on Friday, it's the senior graduation rehearsal. And there's also an opportunity for students to go back and visit their elementary schools at 12 p.m. at noontime. And so we also have students that are going back to St. Joe's, that attended St. Joe's. And we're going to drop in there just to kind of, see how life is over there and hopefully visit with Joe Sullivan. But that's a quick update. And of course, everyone knows graduation is 10 a.m. at Landrigan on Saturday. And so that's it for my comments and updates. Again, thanks to Shay for being here this evening. The later it gets in the year, the harder it is to kind of wrangle personnel to kind of do things, because they have so many commitments. So that's where we're at. And just also to let people know, you heard a little bit tonight about the Hate Ends Now cattle car. Amy McLeod and Andy Moody, I believe, went to Newton today to meet with the leadership there in town to talk about bringing the cattle car back here, and also to find out more about funding and how we might do that, right? And so that's something that she's working on now. And last week was a pretty great week for the social studies department here at the high school. I think, as Jason Pavey described it, it's like Super Bowl week for the history teachers, right? And so they have the Hate Ends Now kind of exhibit, and they also have the Memorial Day gathering which was just, could not have gone off better, and the kids were amazing. But, kudos to all involved that made last week go as smoothly as it did, so thank you. That's
Great.
it for me.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Wonderful. All right, moving on. I'd like to take chair comments after subcommittee reports and move into subcommittee reports and specifically policy and communications. So I think we'd like to discuss homework guidelines if Ms. Colleran is still able to join us.
Thank you, yeah. Because I have to run off and go help my children with their homework. So,
Pete, you're the chair of policy
I am,
currently.
but it's fine.
no,
Is that
no, no,
okay with
I'm
you?
saying, yes, that's
Okay,
my explanation
sorry.
as to why I need to run right after this.
No worries. So we did not have a meeting since our last meeting. We do have one planned for Wednesday, June 5th at 4:45 via Zoom. And there are two items we're going to talk about tonight, and we'll go out of order on them just to help Eileen. No, it's fine, Eileen. So the first one we're going to talk about is the homework guidelines, and I'll just give a quick overview of how we got to this one. So this was not meant to be a policy. This was meant to be some guidelines that would live in the handbooks for each of the school. And the goal of this, I would say really there were two main goals that I think came out of drafting this policy, at least for me. One was the statement that we're trying to be flexible and not have homework take over students' lives outside of the classroom. So I think that was number one. And number two was a path for families or students who are struggling with the amount of homework they have, where they're told, speak to the teacher, or if you're not having any success in advocating in that path, speak to the school principal to advocate for whatever assistance you need or any struggles you're having with homework. So it was not meant to be something rigid and to say to teachers only X amount of homework or to say students only X amount of homework, but really more to have those two main goals. How do you give the idea that homework is there to help improve skills they're working on in class or that they need to be working on, but not have it just be something that just overtakes all of the free time or a family's free time as well. And Eileen, you had some feedback you want to provide.
Well, we can do that during the discussion. if you
No, I
want.
think you can give it now. Go ahead.
Okay.
It's fine.
Well, how about we make the motion?
Yeah.
And then we'll have discussion on the motion.
Yeah, go ahead.
Move that the school committee approve Wakefield Public School homework guidelines as presented.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Is there a discussion?
Yes. So I don't think that the guidelines go far enough. I helped to write this with the team and everything, but I think what I'm most concerned about is that equity piece, and that not everyone has a me who can sit there and help their kid do their homework. There's ELL students whose parents, their English is not their first language. There are children whose parents are working third shifts and are not there for them, that can sit with them and do the homework. It's not their fault, I'm just saying. There's kids that get easily overwhelmed. There's kids with disabilities that what takes them 20 minutes and what takes another kid 20 minutes looks totally different. So to perhaps a teacher, it might look like they didn't complete that assignment and they're gonna mark that down. So I think that piece of really thinking about that equity piece is really, really, really important. And we have to think of the kids as a whole and not just, I feel like we kind of look at it in I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, I should have written something down, but we're looking at it very straight and narrow of yeah, it's just a couple questions, but for some kids, those couple of questions is a lot. And so for me, I'm very passionate about this. I'm very passionate about equity in school. And so some kids are not getting that equitable education. So I look forward to next year. I think Kara was thinking of doing some sort of training, professional development training or something with some sort of equitable grading.
Are you talking about the grading for equity book studies?
Yes.
But those have been happening this year at Galvin and the high school ILTs did a book study around
Right.
grading for equity.
Yeah.
As a starting point.
Okay, yeah, so, I look forward to kind of hearing more about that and what teachers are taking that information and how they're implementing it into the classroom. So I will never say it goes far enough. I'm gonna vote for it because I think having something on paper and having some sort of guidelines are important. It's something for people to reference. I've heard of a lot of parents in recent weeks. I'm bummed they didn't come to public comment because they had said that they were going to come. But some parents being really overwhelmed with the workload, especially towards the end of the year and having all of these other end of the year activities and everything. And so it's definitely something on people's minds. So I just wanted to speak on behalf of people that I'm hearing from. It's not just me, I promise. So.
Thank you. Kevin?
Yeah, I think that, like Eileen, what you just said, you know, we're talking about a homework policy here, but I think that there's also a grading issue as well. So when we're talking about equity, like what's happening in the classroom is relatively equitable in that all the kids are in the classroom, they're all getting the same thing. But you're right in that a 20-minute homework assignment, you know, one kid it might take 5 minutes, might take another kid 15, might take another kid 2 hours. So obviously, you're not going to have, you know, perfect equity in that area. But I think that, you know, and I don't know if policy is going to be looking at this, and I'm sure you guys have a lot of other stuff. But I think looking at a grading policy that wouldn't necessarily, you know, penalize, you know, homework in that way, if that's something that is, you know, is actually, you know, causing frustration. Not just frustration because, you know, a student isn't able to do the assignment, but also the stress that, oh my gosh, my grade's gonna be knocked down because I can't, you know,
Right.
get this done, or I don't know how to, you know, do it right.
Yeah.
So I think that, you know, that's something, and as a teacher, I mean, and again, one hard part about making guidelines like this is trying to create the flexibility for teachers to be able to, you know, give assignments that, you know, they think are, you know, worthwhile and constructive, like we put in the guidelines. But at the same time, I can tell you just from personal experience, teachers are very, you know, split on different issues with homework. You know, some, you know, there's people out there that are like, oh, hard work, the kid's getting all their work done, you should get, you know, A's for that. And then there's other teachers that say, well, yeah, but let's see what they actually can produce after the whole thing, you know, in terms of assessment. So there's, I'm getting into the weeds here, but I do think that looking at grading policy is, or sorry, grading guidelines is, I don't want to overstep, but you know, I think that's part of what, you know, you're talking about here too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kevin?
So kind of related to, or picking up on what Kevin had mentioned, that I do think that there's a wide variety of opinions on this, certainly. So what I'm curious, anybody on the committee, or I know this maybe has started last year, what kind of feedback, or can you talk about any feedback you garnered from teachers here, and what was that feedback, and how was that a part of the decision, or the final result of this guidelines?
So I can speak to more recent feedback we had from a student. Kevin will probably remember some of the feedback that came from Dr. Lyons, from some of the staff, but I'll talk to we had a student who came to our subcommittee meeting, and he kind of made the same point Eileen made, like that this homework takes him a very long time, and it's very stressful. And you know, I'll say, you know, I attended the 5th grade new parent orientation at the Galvin the other day. And, you know, one of the things that I remember from my kids coming to the Galvin was that the amount of homework load from 4th grade to 5th grade is significantly higher. And so and it was something that the staff mentioned as well as part of the presentation. And I will say there were some parents who had feedback both during that and afterwards that, you know, their kids are already struggling with the amount of homework in 4th grade, which, you know, is relatively small, at least in my experience, compared to what's going to happen in 5th grade. So I think that at least the comment from the student reflected Eileen's point, which is, you know, not every student, you know, what may take one student 10 seconds can take another student 45 minutes. And I mean, I'll just give a simple example. You know, my 4th grader may have something that I think should take her 20 seconds to do, but because it's just frustrating, it could actually take her 45 minutes or an hour to do, even though that wasn't the intention of the teacher. Like, it wasn't necessarily a 45-minute assignment, but it turned into taking that long. Kevin, do you want to reflect back on any of the feedback we got from staff and stuff? I know we got that early on.
Yeah, I mean, I know when we got the student feedback that you just described, pretty much hit exactly what Eileen said in terms of what he was saying about homework. One of the larger takeaways I got from this presentation was that I was thinking, wait a minute, this he was fourth grade, right?
Yes,
Fifth grade,
fourth.
yeah. And the quality of his presentation, maybe he'll be like, well, if I got a presentation like this from a fourth grader,
Yeah.
the kid doesn't have to do any homework for 2 months because that assessment on that presentation is unbelievable.
Yeah.
Like it was, so again, talking about grading, right?
Right.
If you get assessed in this way, it's like, all right, A+, we don't need to do these other things. But the feedback that you gave from the teachers, from the staff, I would say that was pretty varied. You know, I think that it wasn't like all the teachers were saying we should reduce homework. It was much more like you would think that it was.
Well, and I think the one thing is, like, we really didn't want to create a policy. Like, thou shall give kindergartners 10 minutes of work in this grade, this, I've seen those in other districts. Like, that wasn't the goal here. It was guidelines really to go after what you were saying, Eileen. Like,
Yeah.
how do you tell kids and families, this isn't the goal of homework. It's not to make your life miserable.
Right.
And then how do you tell them what to do if a teacher thinks this may take 10 minutes of time, but it takes your kid 2 hours of time? How do you have that conversation? Who do you talk to? Start with the teacher. Hopefully they work with you and their understanding, and then maybe something can be done as a result. But if you don't feel like you're getting a resolution that works, talk to building administration regarding your situation.
So how was maybe this is for Dr. Lyons, how was that feedback solicited?
So I shared just a copy of the guidelines. I shared what we were going for, and I shared a copy of the guidelines with the union. And so I didn't get much back. You know, I think they appreciated not having a rigid policy because, you know, teacher practice is also part of this conversation as well, right? And so we want teachers to know their students, and we want teachers to be able to make decisions around knowing their students and how to support them, but also how to challenge them, right? So in that space, the sense I got, I think that there was appreciation that it wasn't a policy, right? And that it wasn't rigid. So, and again, that might be me kind of reading into the tea leaves a little bit more than was communicated, but that was the sense I got, right? But we got feedback from principals and the administrative team that was very similar, right? We do this, so therefore we would like to have this honored. And in some instances we could, and then in some instances we couldn't, right? Because it wasn't general enough. It was more like Pete was describing, like at this level, we, you know, talk about giving this many minutes. It's like, hold on, right? So this is again, a general guideline, and it's as much a prompt as anything else, right? To say, these are just general kind of targets, right? We don't want, you know, homework to take over people's lives if it's not meeting the needs equitably in regard to a range of students. I think we covered that in the language that we used in the guidelines. And so that's where we're at. It was difficult to create the document that we created, and kind of to also try to strike the line where we were trying to strike. So, you know, Dr. Piscadla, that's a longer
No,
answer
that's
than-
helpful, yeah.
But that's the sense I got.
Appreciate that, thank you.
Of course.
And I think, you know, like I said before, I'm happy that we're putting something on paper. We're putting some sort of guideline. It's kind of like a Wakefield Public School philosophy almost on homework, I would say, more than anything. And I just know that speaking with other parents in the community, they were kind of surprised that we didn't already have anything in place. So I'm happy to do this and have something in place that could possibly help families, and that they could, you know, point with our beautiful new website. They can point to that to a teacher and say, like, according to the guidelines, you know, 20 minutes, you know, something like that. You know, whatever the case is, that they have something to kind of talk to with the teacher, like we're saying, and administration. So I'm happy to have that.
Yeah, and I mean, the point that you made about grading for equity, and Kevin was spot on in terms of,
Right.
you know,
Maybe that's a
we're
separate
talking
issue.
about
Yeah.
homework guideline is, again, not a policy, it's a guideline, it's general. When we're talking about grading, that's a whole other kind of level, where it's going to be different at elementary, it's going to be different at middle, it's going to be different at high
Yeah.
school, And, you know, then we really need to be thinking very thoughtfully about, you know, what are we learning in regard to, what are we learning from best
Yeah.
practices? What are we learning from our expert teachers? What are we learning from kind of this text, you know, grading for equity? So
Yeah.
more to follow on that.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to
Yeah.
discussing that in the next year and just making sure we're always remembering the kids who, you know, it's not as easy for them
Yeah.
to complete for whatever reason.
And I would just point to the second paragraph, which I think is the most important paragraph of the entire guidelines. Considering individual learning needs, providing support, and then the
Right.
most important, the last sentence, care will be taken to ensure that homework is flexible and does not take over a student's life.
Yes.
Right, I mean, that's the
Right.
crux of what what concern we're trying to.
It might have been a quote from somebody.
It might have been a quote from someone.
I don't know for
I
sure.
think you
I don't know for sure.
you actually took out the collar and claws part.
I did. I didn't think it was fair.
That
to-
was the original
I didn't think it was
draft.
fair to leave your name in there, but yes.
Could have lived in infamy.
I would just come and having read it, it's clear that sort of some time was taken to craft it, and it's well written. I would just caution against sort of. I believe should. I think teachers do this. I like to believe that like 99.59% of teachers do this. It's been my experience. I believe that they're thoughtful when managing workloads for students. I know it can be a challenge for any number of students, but I like to think that this is sort of written to what is being done currently, instead of feeling like we're telling teachers sort of how to do their craft. And if, as every other sort of, if there's a friction point in a classroom, of course you go up through sort of administration. You talk to the principal or the vice principal or the assistant, like whoever it is, and get to a point of understanding. I think that happens. And so that's where I'm glad it's not a policy, because I'm sort of, it reminds me of like mandatory minimum sentencing. It's like where you're prescribing an action to somebody that should have discretion. And that's what I think of it is in our classrooms. Our students are individuals. They're being taught by someone who's very close to them in a qualified size classroom. I think they know their students. I think they know the loads. I think they know if they're overwhelming their population. And hopefully it's being addressed. Again, at least that's been my experience.
So if I could just add, if I may, the last sentence, if you have questions or need support, do not hesitate to reach out to your child's teacher.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And so that could not be more direct, right? And so, again, so when I described this a moment ago as a prompt, right? I think that sentence captures it beautifully, right? We want to create a conversation, right? Teachers want to know how we can help and how we can support your son or daughter and kind of help your child in their learning. And so that's my very quick summary, but I'll leave it there.
I think there's definitely a balance between sort of the homework should not cause anxiety and angst about school learning. You want your kid to come back the next day to school feeling good, ready to start the next day, not freaking out about what they had to do the night before. At the same time, there is learning that needs to happen outside of the classroom, because we teach subjects that can be wholly larger than what can be contained inside of like a 45-minute period in a class. And then once you're doing that at home, you're realizing where your shortfalls are. Hopefully you're bringing that back to the class. Your teacher knows where to direct sort of supports. But anyway, I'll go back to, I appreciate the way that this was crafted. I'm glad that it's not a policy and that it is a guideline. And it offers some supports on what I think, almost like our mission statement, is capturing sort of a practice that happens now, is what my hope is. But Melissa?
I was just going to say I came on board after most of this was already done. So my initial reaction was, why do we even need this? Of course, these are what teachers are doing. Obviously, this is what teachers are doing every day in school. This is great. Why do we even need this guideline? And then I realized it's really more about communicating it to our families and to our kids and making sure that everyone's on the same page, and how often that gets lost. And I think we need to do a much better job of communicating with our families. So I think this is you know, you changed my mind. I'm here for it.
Great.
I can be very persuasive.
Yes, yes. Good at what you do. Anyone else? Okay, motion's been made and seconded in discussion. Those in favor? And that is unanimous. Thank you so much for the hard work.
So next up in policy and communications, we've been talking about the religious accommodation policy, and we were revisiting a policy that, if I recall, was last revised maybe like 5 years ago or so. And we had received some feedback from community members that the policy we had wasn't really equitable across all religions. And so as we looked to revise it, we definitely got some strong feedback in that area that there was areas where we were like calling out certain holidays to be major holidays and this, and it was just causing not having equal treatment to all students. So we kind of, I would say, almost started from scratch. I mean, we went to the policy and we just said, like, what is the goal of this policy? And in that, what we really wanted to do was make sure that every student would have the ability to practice their religion and practice their religious observations. And that if you needed an accommodation, meaning you wouldn't be in school or you wouldn't be there for a test or you wouldn't be able to have homework on time, you would let the school know, whether the student based on the age or the parent, and we would just accommodate whoever needed an accommodation. So based on that, we didn't put any text in to try to say this holiday is more important than some other holiday. We did, amongst talking about the feedback we received, also had a local religious leader give us some feedback, which I thought was very helpful as well. And so the policy in front of you for today that I'll make a motion on was really taking into consideration all of that feedback. And I'll just summarize, say, it looks very different than the old policy, but the goal there is to just say, it doesn't matter what your religion is, we will accommodate you if you're not in school, in terms of anything you would miss for tests, or there's obviously an exception there if it's based on, I forget the exact text, but if it's just impractical to meet whatever you're asking for, but what is the exact?
Unreasonable burden.
Yeah, if it's an unreasonable burden on the school district, it's one thing, but that's not, you know, the expectation is people that are observing whatever religious observances they have won't have it held against them if they're going to miss something and have to make it up at a later date. So with that, yeah, I'll make a motion. Move that the school committee approve religious accommodation policy 906R. And there was one edit I'm going to propose beyond what was in the packet. And that is, we did receive through Dr. Lyons an edit on the legal reference on the last line from our attorney. And so Judy has that. It's the same exact text, but the legal reference at the bottom has been corrected. And so that's the addition I'll make on the motion.
And just for clarity, that's just the actual Mass General Law.
Just the legal
Just the
reference on
number
the
reference.
last line, none of the text in the policy.
Got it.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the policy? Okay, I have a question, which is in our previous policy, it was sort of, there was language in there that was the district will do its best effort to not schedule things on significant religious observances. I'm seeing that in paragraph 3 to a degree. I'm seeing effectively no student or family would be sort of penalized for, observing. But is it where does that live in this policy?
Do you want to answer that?
It doesn't matter, I can answer.
So we wanted to get out of the business of classifying religious holidays, because that is getting us into trouble. It's not our job to be saying, okay, we've got to figure out, well, this day we can schedule this, but that day we can't. Oh, we can't do that day. But so the goal of this policy is to just get rid of that completely. So we wanted to erase pretty much all vestiges of that.
Sure.
Just because that implies getting in the business of classifying days.
Sure.
Because I think there was one link of proposed religious days where there was 80 of them.
Mm-hmm.
We only teach 180, 3 days. So we thought it made sense to create a policy that really just went to the accommodations to make sure that there would be no discrimination for any student that was observing religious belief or practice, and yeah. So that's where the thought process came in.
Okay.
And so to go back to your question, Stephen, there's no exceptions where we have specifically named holidays
Yeah.
for anything, whether it's a test, whether it's a project due, whether it's something we may do after school. But if you can't be in school on that day, then and you have a religious you say, I'm not going to be in school because I'm observing a religious holiday, then you'll be given extra time to do a test, to make up a test, to hand in homework. The problem was in the old policy is that we were saying these holidays have a certain treatment, but then it's saying that other holidays that people may celebrate in the district don't get any special treatment. And we just found it like we really couldn't make that distinction and try to have a policy that was going to be equitable. And that's why we did away with that.
I agree. Yeah. So what about for things such as, and I think I go back to maybe it was in the fall or something. What if there was a sporting event or like something extracurricular?
So all concept of we have special exceptions on these named days has been removed from this policy. There's no named days where we don't do X, Y, and Z. Because if we pick a named day, why did we pick that one? But another student, for their religion, we had a sporting event on that night. It's not fair.
Okay.
So we don't, as Kevin was saying, we don't make decisions based on religious holidays in here. We don't call out any religious holidays. We just say if you're not going to be in school for a religious observance, you're not going to be penalized. You'll be given an opportunity to make up that work.
Okay.
Yeah, number 5.
Yep. Saw that. Okay. Thank you. That makes sense. Melissa.
Just, I'm just curious about the first point, how parents are required to notify the school. Like, are we sending them to the main office? Are we sending them to the teachers? Does it matter? Like, is there any guidance there? Like, how does this work practically?
So that's an existing, if your kid's not going to be in school, you have a requirement to notify the school that they're absent. How that's done actually differs by school. I know at the high school is like an automated number, I believe, that calls you if your kid's absent. But at the other grades, it's your responsibility to communicate.
Right, so there's a difference between a general absence and an accommodation.
Right.
Right?
But how does this get to the classroom teacher?
So if someone calls in at any school, it will get to the teacher.
Okay.
Right? You can contact the teacher directly, or you can contact the main office. And the accommodation will be afforded to that student.
Okay.
Right? That's our working theory here.
But the main point here, to your point, is we are not mind readers. Like, we don't know your kid was absent because they were celebrating Y holiday. So you have the responsibility as a student, if you're out for religious observance, or a parent who's calling into the school, to let the school know that. And that also allows the school to classify that absence differently. Because if you just call the school and say my kid's out, well, that's an unexcused absence. But if you call the school and say my kid's out because they're celebrating a religious observance, that's considered an excused absence.
Right, well, but again, if an accommodation is needed in the classroom, it will be provided. But it has to be kind of asked for, is what Pete is also saying, right?
Yes.
And there's no requirements about when it happens.
We talked about that, and we decided not to put in any stringent language regarding thou must do it in advance, or.
Okay.
Yeah.
And just to reiterate, this has come a long way since what it was before, if you really compare the last policy and this one. And we really took the feedback from religious leaders in our community, from community members, and so I feel like we're at the most equitable place we can be. I use that word a lot tonight, but I do feel like we're at a really good place with this policy.
That's great. Tom?
Thank you. I'm really pleased to see that this is demonstrably different than both the prior policy, or I guess still existing policy, as well as the draft that was distributed a month or more ago. I had various concerns over the years about how the prior policy was implemented, and through no fault of anyone's, it's what it was. So I want to thank the policy subcommittee for taking a few steps back from the feedback that you received back a month and a half ago or so, and put in the additional time into this. This is really well done, and I'm very pleased to see it in this format. So thank you very much for that work.
Great. Okay. Motion's been made and seconded. Those in favor? All right. That is unanimous. And thank you again for the hard work.
So I had a few more updates from the Policy and Communication Subcommittee. So as I mentioned, our next meeting is going to be on June 5th at 4:45. We have a few items on the agenda. I'm not sure we're going to get to all of these. We have a policy book, Section D, that came from MASC and Dr. Lyons, so we're going to be reviewing that. We did get some feedback from a community member regarding our field trip policy, so we may look at that a little, specifically as it pertains to students who aren't going on maybe an overnight field trip and what that experience looks like. We did get some feedback from one of our CPAC representatives to ask if maybe we should look at having a CPAC policy in the future. It was something that I did not find many districts had, but there were a couple two or three that I found out there that had them. And then the last one is we have some feedback we've received, or forms from the neighborhood Christian school, and Dr. Lyons will share that with us, and then hopefully the subcommittee will be able to give some feedback when he's back, when Michael Carl is back in front of the full committee, maybe towards the end of June, or end of June meeting approximately. So
Spot on, Pete.
so those were the items for the subcommittee.
Great. Thank you. We'll stick in subcommittee reports and start from the top. And Mr. Markham, Finance and Facilities, is there an update?
No, we have not met since the last school committee meeting.
Okay. Thank you. Dr. Piscadlo.
Yeah, Labor and Personnel, we met last Wednesday, May 22nd. Covered two main topics. I did update the committee a little bit on the JLMC that I had attended for the first time, so that was a good experience. And then we talked about salary scales, which we'll be discussing tonight. Just wanting to produce some new salary scales for us to consider moving forward as we continue to negotiate with some of our non-rep staff. And then we started to talk a little bit about, we were hoping that Amy McLeod was going to be able to join us. Unfortunately, she wasn't able to. Really want to keep on top of the continued discussion around the high school climate survey and the action steps that are being taken. So in her place, Dr. Lyons kind of shared a little bit of an update of some of the next steps that have been taken. But our goal is probably at our next meeting to have Ms. McLeod there so that we can hear from her a little bit about some of the things that have been taking place since we had met with her a couple meetings ago. And she had detailed some of the next steps that they were taking there. So we will be having a meeting. I'll be reaching out to Kevin and Tom and the administration to schedule our next meeting, probably the next couple weeks.
Great. Thank you. And is there a motion?
There is a motion. Move that the school committee approve the FY25 salary ranges for non-reps as presented.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Mr. Markham?
Thanks. Just to follow up on this particular issue, this was also shared with the Finance Subcommittee at the meeting that we did have, which was prior to the last school committee meeting. Just in some broad strokes, I think this is as important for us to review on a regular basis, whether it's annually or certainly regularly, to make sure that we remain as competitive for the marketplace to our administrative team as we seek to be for all employees. And I think that's an incredibly important point here. We have not changed the salary ranges since fiscal year 22, which is effectively 3 years. This is a salary ranges for fiscal 25. So I think it's certainly due for us to have this sort of review. And thirdly, I think it's important to note that these are salary ranges. These are not precise dollar amounts. This is some of these positions will come before the school committee as we are involved in some of the appointments. But most of these, the vast majority of these are the superintendents to negotiate and appoint. But it's important that these are ranges. These are not, the community shouldn't think, or none of us should think, or the incumbents of these positions should think that they're going to be getting, they're not landing at the high end of a scale or that. But it's important work for us to be competitive. It's important work for us to recognize and to compensate, all staff. So, both finance and labor is recommending these ranges.
Great, thank you. And for those who are watching who would like to, these ranges, this document exists in our packet and is publicly available. And I appreciate sort of the transparency and putting it out there. And salaries that I think are competitive, so that we can retain quality staff that sort of Wakefield has come accustomed to. So if there's no more discussion, those that are in favor. All right. Again, that is unanimous, recognizing that Ms. Colleran had to depart. Okay, student services. Well, Ms. Colleran is not here. You also on student services?
I was there.
Had you been?
Yeah, I was. Well, I was there for a little bit of the last meeting. You want to give an update, Doug? Go ahead.
I can give student
Sure,
services.
do it.
if you like. So student services, in the last meeting, we met and we talked about late start. And I think it was the feeling of the committee that what we'd like to do is start to think about who would be really great to have on a kind of a task group, right, to understand more about kind of the workings of what it means to do a late start, right? And so we'll be putting together, I think, a committee in the fall, right, to look at and to share some different ideas and perspectives. And there'll be a cross-section of personnel. There'll be teachers, there'll be parents, there'll be administrators, and the idea is just to really share and have a conversation with the task force about what does it take, right? What are the pros? What are the cons? What are we learning from other districts? The districts that have done it well, what have they learned, and kind of really taking that into account. And then we need to make a decision after we look at this information about how Wakefield is going to move forward. But that's kind of that's where we spent a lot of time talking about a task force to really take on that conversation with more broad representation, right? But that's where we're at.
That's great.
Fair?
I know during a lot of the preliminary discussions, what came out of that was realizing how many stakeholders there really are, and something that sounds as simple as, oh, let's just start a little bit later. It touches a lot of places.
It does.
So, well, all right. Is that all?
That's it.
Yep. Okay. Any liaison reports? Mr. Davis.
The Human Rights Commission has two big events coming up in June. So the first one is going to be Monday, June 3rd. Both of these are going to be at the AmeriCal. They have the Progress Flag Raising event. I attended last year. I know this year they're going to have, I thought I remember like the WMHS, some of the WMHS singers were going to be there as well. And so that will be the 6 p.m. on Monday, the 3rd of June. And then on Thursday, June 20th at 6 p.m., there's an event to honor Juneteenth Freedom Day. And then they will have, they had to do it a day late because of some scheduling issues with some of the folks who were attending, but there still will be raising the Juneteenth flag a day earlier on June 19th, even though the actual event itself will be on Thursday, June 20th.
Great. Anybody else? No? Okay. Just jumping right back up to Chair's comments. Future school committee schedule and retreat agenda. So in the packet, you'll see our sort of selected dates for upcoming meetings. I think all of those had worked aside. I know one of them was you can't make, Pete. And then Kara had messaged over that administration wouldn't be able to make the July date. So we may look to shift perhaps that date, because I think it's important to have administration at school committee meetings. As a general rule, we'll work with that
Thank you.
practice. Yeah.
It's also required.
Yeah. And then also for the retreat agenda, just to maybe go on, so the retreat agenda is going to go over sort of committee goals and expectations. Again, hoping to have an MASC rep in to talk about sort of maybe Chapter 70, and then supervision of the superintendent, which will come up this year as part of our practice. And then what I would mention is that it is not an executive session. It is an open session. It will be publicly posted. We will find the venue for it, and those from the public that wish to attend will be free to attend. I know I attended prior to being on school committee, and so it's open. It might be boring for some. The reason that we don't generally do it in a general setting like this is because there are only so many dates out there that we really can get together as a group and have meetings and have sort of poignant discussions with other people in the district. This one thing to have a chance to focus as a group on specific topics of the work that we do, I think is important. And we will, as has been past practice, absolutely read out on what occurs in those meetings through minutes and whatnot. So that will be the intent. Aside from that, I really don't have much else for comments aside to say congratulations to the graduating class this year. In terms of upcoming things, when you talked about the HRC event, you triggered something in my brain, Pete, which is to remind myself that prior to the Pride flag raising, there's a rededication at the Galvin School for Gene Sorensen, who was a pivotal person in sort of the galvanized movement that helped us get, the public support behind funding the new Galvin School. So if the flag raising is at 6, I think that rededication is at 5. So I would urge, if people are available, that they come and attend and sort of just honor her memory and sort of what she has given to our community. With that said, I will just move on to future dates and agenda items. Next school committee meeting is Tuesday, June 11th at 7. We have a number of future agenda items. Is there anything that anyone feels like we are missing for future agenda items? No? Okay. Yeah, I agree. That's a lofty list.
I have a question. The school choice one we can remove, right? Because we obviously covered that.
You bet we can.
Correct.
That won't show up on the next one.
Okay.
It won't be a future agenda item.
I have a question. Is the
Yeah, Mr. Markham.
retiree reception at the which June meeting is that?
First.
The first,
We were
June
just
11th?
emailing about that June 11th, if that works for.
Thank you.
Active planning.
Do we know how many retirees we're expecting?
Not yet.
I want to say, Judy, did you say yes?
No, she said not yet.
Oh, I thought, I was going to say, I want to say, I think 6, but we had some that have just retired earlier this year, and I think are just looking to come back with the rest of the retirees, because what we had talked about is, honoring them in a timely manner and inviting them back, and I think that they said, I think we'd rather come back with everybody, which is great.
I really enjoyed that celebration last year, just getting to hear the stories. I mean, some of the teachers I knew, some I didn't know, but just hearing their stories and, how long they've been in the district and all the other stuff, I'm looking forward to hearing that again.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good event. All right. School committee comments. Go around the horn. Pete?
Just a couple of items. Number one, I really enjoyed the groundbreaking event that we were invited to for the high school. I mean, it was kind of short and sweet, but just hearing the speakers, it was also nice to hear from one of our state reps and our state senator about the additional almost $15 million that will be coming back to the town for the high school project, so that was nice as well. And no, I really enjoyed that. And then I'll speak about the Hate Ends Now cattle car. I didn't know what to expect going into it. And I definitely, I don't know, it left me thinking a lot as I left that, and just knowing what people had been through, and I don't know. I mean, it wasn't a very long presentation, but it really stuck with me after I saw it.
I agree. It was very impactful.
Yeah.
Well, for those and a number of Melissa, did you attend? And Tom, did you attend? And Kevin, I think a majority of the school committee attended. When you go in the car, and before the thing even starts, the woman that's sort of organizing it tells you that she's going to close the door and like you can open it if you're feeling nervous. And when she ever closed that door and your lights just don't adjust right away and it's dark and it was impactful. I wasn't ready for that. I was like, I've learned, I've been educated, like I know the facts and the, but that was a guttural thing. That was sort of very, it hit me in a place I wasn't necessarily prepared for. And so I'm thankful that sort of that could come to our district. When I talked about other members of my family who are educators, they were impressed that sort of Wakefield was able to sort of secure that and bring that that piece of knowledge, sort of that experience to the students. So yeah, so it's poignant. Anyone else? No. Okay. Well, everyone, try and show up if you're coming to the graduation. Show up early. The worst feeling is when you're running up the road to pomp and circumstance. So yeah, just as the students are probably also told. All right, and maybe we'll see you on Saturday. So, motion to adjourn.
Move that the school committee adjourn its meeting of Tuesday, May 28, 2024.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Those in favor? Aye. Unanimous. Thank you all. Have a good evening.
Thank you, everybody.